of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to the July 20th, 2017 meeting of the Philipstown Planning Board. Tara, will you take the roll?
Anthony Moranti.
Here.
Kim Connor.
Here. I thought you said David Hardy. No?
Kim Connor.
All right. I was just jumping the gun.
Dave, they don't even sound
Dennis
alike.
Gagnon.
Here.
David Hardy.
Here.
Peter Lewis. Neil Toman.
Here.
Neil Zuckerman.
Here.
People, have you guys been through the minutes from the June meeting? Anybody have any comments on the minutes from June? Comments, additions, deletions? Anyone? Gentlemen? No. Oh, there, Peter's here. No, it's okay. Move to adopt the June minutes. Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. Two public hearings tonight. The first one is indexed to the industrial design, 1602 Route 9 Garrison. Tara, would you read the public notice, please?
The Town of Philipstown Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, July 20th, 2017, starting at 7:30 p.m. at the old VFW Hall, 34 Kemble Avenue, Cold Spring, New York, to consider the following application. Index Design and Development, 1602 Route 9, Garrison, tax map number 71.20-1-17. The application represents a request for the construction of an 1,800 square foot addition to the rear of an existing light manufacturing/office building, which is proposed to be used for increased garage, shop, and storage space. The proposed addition, if approved, will bring the total building size to 5,400 square foot. The property is located in the HC zoning district. At said hearing, all persons will have the right to be heard. Copies of the application, plat map, and other related materials may be seen in the office of the Planning Board at the Philipstown Town Hall, dated at Philipstown, New York, this 26th day of June, 2017. Anthony Moranti, Chairman.
Thank you, Tara. The representative for Index.
Yes.
State your name, please, for the record.
Andre Grasso. I'm the owner of Index Industrial Design and Development, and we are, as stated, looking to add on to our existing building.
Speak up, please. Speak up.
Okay. Where did we leave off?
Your name.
My name. How's that? Better? All right, we are looking to add an addition onto the existing building, as stated, for storage and extended office space and shop space.
We have, the only information I have is the original application and the drawings.
Yes.
Is there anything new that, since then you submitted?
No, nothing, there's nothing new. What I did do was take all of the existing information that you have and reviewed Ron's technical comments from June 13th, which the information was in the document, so all I did was prepare something to hand out that takes the same information and just separates it, so it's easier to understand, which I can distribute.
If you have it?
Yeah, sure.
Please.
Yeah. What I did is just add a color and separated information that was probably too much.
Do you
in
have-
one document. For new information, just clarified information that was already on the documents.
So there are no changes
No.
to the original?
No.
And you were granted a variance from the ZBA. Would you explain what the variance is for?
The variance that we received was because we were 9% over the allowable lot coverage, impervious area, building, pavement, et cetera. So we applied, and based on our documents and requests, it was approved by the zoning board, so they will allow us to develop the building as illustrated on all the documents.
Okay. Okay, board members, anybody have questions? Neil? Tom? Those?
No, my recollection was it was just that one issue.
Okay.
The zoning, yeah.
The site visit, nothing else.
Yeah.
Right, I don't think we had any, I don't think that was the only thing that you needed to straighten out.
Right.
I remember vaguely a site visit a while ago, something about the utility pole and lines. Does that enter into the picture at all?
Yeah, that has to be, I've already been in meetings with Central Hudson and Optimum and Verizon about relocating the pole,
Okay.
which is stunning, needless to say.
Open it to the audience. Any questions from the audience? In case you don't know, this property is right next to Garrison Fire Department.
Right.
And proposed two-story steel building with an addition with a full basement, storage, and garage for adjacent existing building. Okay. Nothing? Okay, I'll ask for a motion to close the public hearing. Moves, seconded. All in favor? Aye. And we will ask Ron to prepare resolutions, and you'll have them for next month. And Steve, any comments?
The only thing is, I don't think I saw a 239M response from the county. Did we get that, and I just haven't seen it, or?
I have not received it. Tara? No. So
All right, it was sent though, right?
we sent it all.
All right, if it's been more than 30 days.
Yeah,
then it
more than
doesn't
30
make a
days,
difference. Okay, that's fine then.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Nothing else? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me just introduce it as soon as it gets set. Second public hearing is Rockman Burquist, 67 Old West Point Road, Garrison. We've received revised drawings for a proposed site plan of a new residential estate, which includes a main house, detached garage, guest house, pool house, and outdoor pool. And the proposal is now going to take place in two phases. Would you, Kara, would you read the public notice?
The Town of Philipstown Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, July 20th, 2017, starting at 7:30 p.m. at the old VFW Hall, 34 Kemble Avenue, Cold Spring, New York, to consider the following application. Rockman Burquist, 67 Old West Point Road East, Garrison, New York, tax map number 82.2-32.1 and 32.2. The application represents a request for the construction of a 4-bedroom, single-family residence with an attached garage, a detached 2-car garage, a separate 3-bedroom guest cottage, pool, and pool house. Currently, the lot is vacant. The property is a 16.686-acre parcel in the RR zoning district. At said hearing, all persons will have the right to be heard. Copies of the application, plat map, and other related materials may be seen in the office of the Planning Board at the Philipstown Town Hall. Dated at Philipstown, New York, this 26th day of June, 2017. Anthony Moranti, Chairman.
Good evening. State your case and Name, please?
Yes, hello. James Hartford here in Cold Spring River Architects. This is my wife and business partner, Ju Hee, who is also an architect, Ju Hee Lee Hartford. We've got the renderings of the proposed buildings for our project. These are the phase one portion of it, where we've got the cottage, the garage, and the pool house. This drawing here shows the entire site, with the pink being the area of disturbance. If you recall, this driveway is already installed, thank you, on the site, and that was by the previous owner under a separate application and has been completed. The previous owner had created kind of prepared an area for septic. After subsequent tests, we've learned that that area was disturbed to the point where it actually is failing the perk test because of the way the soil is mixed. So we've ended up, we were initially planning this to be the reserve area for the septic. That is now the primary with the reserve over here. And so we do not need to disturb the reserve area yet, so we're not counting that into the area of disturbance. But that's the entire phased project, 1 and 2 area of disturbance. We're showing this as part of that area of disturbance because we intend to restore that area to a natural state. The hillside has been prepared by the previous owner and is not in a natural state. We intend to use that ultimately as the phase 2 main house. But that area currently for phase 1 would serve as our staging area to minimize the impacts later on. There are no trees in that spot. It's really just a disturbed top of the hill there. This location here is the proposed cottage with the septic and reserve area here, which would serve that separately. The ridge line basically defines the site like this across here, so that the main house would drain naturally this way. The cottage and the pool house would naturally drain this way, so we're using gravity. The garage is here. It will be unheated. The pool house will be a 3-season structure, so really just a fireplace in that. And the pool is really a small kind of plunge pool adjacent to the main house down the road. Please excuse the pink. So here's kind of blowing up that area I was just talking about. The main house here on the main spot, really just going to be cleaned up in phase 1 once the construction is complete, probably in about 2 years, depending on our client's will. They would then pursue construction of that. So here's the cottage. We've got the gross area of each structure called out here. This area is planned for disturbance for the site as well, right, Julie?
That is for the phase 2 staging area.
Okay, so we intend to fence off areas within so that the trees and the exposed rock are not disturbed during the construction, so they'd be protected to minimize the impact on the site in the immediate vicinity and to preserve the trees and natural setting there.
I should mention that the main house, our client's intention is to be a 4-bedroom house, but when we took the preliminary plans to the health department, they thought that it was going to be considered as a 6-bedroom. And the cottage will be considered as potential 4-bedroom. Right now, it's reading as 3-bedroom, but they will allow us to do 4-bedroom. And the site does have capacity for that.
And the septic for each is designed for that higher bedroom count.
Is the County Department of Health been apprised of the, you said each is engineering-wise capacity for the number of bedrooms, but is county DOH on board with that information?
Yes, the application is in front of them. Beatty & Watson has provided the engineering for it, and the perk tests, so it's well on its way.
So, Mr. Hartman, just to get it straight for me, we've got, I see two septic fields, so the one servicing the outbuildings, so to speak, the one in the lower,
These two will be serviced by the one that's off the map here now.
okay.
And then this one, if you recall during our site visit, is that area disturbance as you come up the long hill.
But you can't use that one, so you're gonna have to
Right.
use, so you're gonna have to, okay.
We're going to move that further down the hill.
Right.
The one has been approved or is being approved?
This one is being approved. This one will be abandoned and returned to a natural state.
And the other one's
And this one actually perk tests much better, so we're able to make it smaller.
And, I'm sorry, I lost my thought. I'll come back to it.
So then I'm confused then, because I want to go back to you said two things that I'm trying to jive together.
Right.
You asked the county for 10-bedroom capacity.
No, we had asked for a lower number, but they had
Oh, okay, but-
assessed as a higher
But
number.
that's 10 across two different septic fields.
Total of 10.
Okay, so let's just go back to, just to make sure apples are with apples and oranges are with oranges.
Right.
What's the capacity of the one for the future house, and what's the capacity of the one for the outbuildings? Because they have to, obviously, you can't have 6-bedroom capacity for a thing that has only 4 bedrooms and vice versa. So can you just clarify that part?
Okay, to clarify, Phase 2, which is the construction of this house, the main house.
The main house.
The main house, and the construction of the septic. Now, it'll be prepared, right?
Doesn't have to be.
Okay, so, so Phase 2 will include the construction of the septic to go with the main house,
Which is 6-bedroom.
the 6-bedroom.
And the capacity of that septic is it 6?
Six bedroom.
That's
Yes.
what, trying
Yes.
to just jive, 6
Right.
with 6, okay.
6 and 6. And so the capacity for the so-called outbuildings, the cottage and the pool house, is for the 4-bedroom level here. So 4 with 4.
And what's graphically a little confusing is that the 4-bedroom looks bigger than the 6-bedroom because we had to disturb more. The perk test was not as good here compared to that.
And also requires the area of disturbance to be, or the, sorry.
reserve area.
The reserve area to be prepared now.
Yeah.
So,
And how far is it to from the house to the one that you're seeking to be approved, down the first one?
This one?
Right, there you go. What's that distance?
It's about, I don't know,
This is about 500 feet each section, so about 1,000 and change.
1,000 feet.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. We haven't gotten pricing on it yet.
I was gonna say.
There are going to be multiple dosing chambers, I'm sure.
Well,
but-
apparently you've got the drop in elevation to,
Yeah, oh, yes, yes,
for
we
that
got
under
that.
consideration, okay.
Yeah,
And pool house has no bedrooms.
No bedrooms.
No bedrooms,
Just,
but
changing, abandoned type.
exactly. A bathroom and shower for preparation for bathing, but not,
and pool house will be connected to this cottage system.
You need to be careful, though, 'cause even if you just have, doesn't have a bedroom, but has a bathroom, and it looks like a bedroom and walks like a bedroom.
right. No, that's, the plans have been submitted to the county, it's all addressed, yep. Okay. And,
That just shows number of trees that we are foreseeing to be cut for this improvement.
so, yeah, so we've walked the site and counted the number of trees in the given areas, so, and that's trees over 8-inch diameter, right?
Yes.
Okay, so 12 at the Phase 1 septic for the so-called cottage, 12 to open up a view shed down the river corridor.
Which went up from, our first estimate was 8, but then when the contractor walked the site with us, he said, okay, I think 12 might be a safer number, so that we've evolved that, we've modified that.
6 in the area of the cottage, 4 at the garage, and 1 at the pool house.
And then by the,
6 down at the septic.
May I just ask if,
Oh, sorry, 5, yeah.
if the additional trees that were added to the 8 that you had some reverse effect in terms of view of the house on the ridgeline? Or
it is, so what the contractor proposed is that we very carefully cut 8 first, and then see what the impact could be. And I have to say, so this sheet has been added since we submitted on July 6th. We brought 2 copies with us for you to see if you like.
Okay. And just to blow up of the landscaping plan, again, phase 2.
Yeah, we're trying, our client's dear request was to maintain as much of the original landscape as possible. So we are trying not to disturb the area between the houses, the buildings, especially because that's the beauty of that they would like to maintain.
Here you see the fence enclosure around, so we're, just clustering it around the buildings, not across the landscape in entirety.
That's just temporary construction.
No, these would be
Phase
like
2.
stone walls and an entry gate. Yeah, and again, that's phase 2, that part. It also includes the pool enclosure, too. And then this is just the existing site survey. So, let's see. Come over here. That's the existing septic, right? The current, the one to be abandoned. Okay, right, yeah, right there, default test. So this is where the septic was previously and to be restored. And this is the new preferred septic location.
You said where the septic was, did you say restore, you're going to restore it?
Yes.
That one? And then build another one farther down?
Correct.
Okay.
Soil conditions just didn't work.
What happened was that they had brought in fill, and then they had mixed it with the organic soils, and so they've really just screwed up the whole percolation of the soil. It just doesn't work anymore. It's really stupid.
Anything else?
We can talk about lights.
Oh, yes.
Lights on this
Yeah,
project.
we have cut sheets. What? Oh, this one, okay. We have cut sheets showing the lighting. It's all dark sky compliant, full cutoff lighting. We've got some kind of interior, low bollards for lighting around pathways between the structures, and in kind of schoolhouse kind of lighting and other like shaded lights for exterior use. All LEDs. The 2 houses are being designed as passive house buildings, so they'll be very low energy consuming buildings, and with the solar photovoltaics that will be roof mounted on the structures, we expect the estate to be net zero. This is the bollard for the lighting, ground lighting. Step lighting. Two choices for structure lighting, entrance, and these are the light sources for them. These are not they're not wall mounted. These would be internal to the fixtures. Great. Yep. And I showed these earlier. These are the kind of the color palette and the material choices that we're working towards with this structure, with really the whole estate. Great. All the pavings will be permeable pavings. I'm using grass, like rollout plastic grass grass pavers or gravel pavers, and we have cut sheets of that.
Stormwater
Yep. The rainwater off the roofs will be handled by cisterns, collected in cisterns for site irrigation, and overflow from those will be mitigated using dry wells that will be installed in line with those. We may provide curtain drains and trench drains as well, cut sheets for our, we will be providing curtain drains and French drains as well, and we have cut sheets for all this in here.
What is the highest point of this house? What's the, how high is it?
The phase 2 house, the highest average roof height is 36 feet. 36.6 feet.
Now, you mean the elevation, you don't mean the ground elevation, right? You mean the height of
The height of the
The
highest
structure.
point of the house?
Yeah, this house will be 36 feet and a half tall at its average.
average attic
Yeah.
or roof height? And
Questions from the board? Neil? go
One more
ahead.
question. This comes from Ron's memo, unless we're going to read it out loud. It's the
Go ahead.
It's the, it's the second to last item on page 2. Starts with an existing driveway is in place, et cetera. I didn't recall, I do remember driving up it, it has mentions here it has 17% grades.
Right.
And we haven't, I don't think we've dealt with this issue since Santucci, if I have the name correct.
Yeah.
When you and I walked up a incredibly steep. And so how do we feel about that? I see it mentions the advice of counsel should be obtained, and he is at the end of the table, so
Well, it's exactly the same as the other one. Santucci, was it?
that the name?
Yeah.
Something like that. They're required to keep it to 14. They can seek a waiver from this board by showing that by keeping it at 17, they're actually disturbing less land than if they had to grade to get the whole pitch to 14. If they cannot show that, then they have to go to the ZBA and seek a variance.
What's an existing driveway, though? It's not, they don't have to go do any disturbance.
They don't, but it's site plan for new buildings on an existing driveway. The rule still applies.
so David Watson did a section of that slope. I believe it's in one of sets.
So an approved driveway that was constructed and approved by the building inspector. I'm not sure if any variances were pursued at that time, but it was approved for a house.
Well, but now you're putting another house and, a number of other things, it's going to get a lot more use. I mean, it seems like it is anyway.
So
I mean, it was just the same construction. I might feel differently about it, but as it is, I think you got to comply.
I think what we have to do is, so Beatty and Watson do show the comparison of the 17% existing grade versus 14% grade. I think we just need to see how this relates to the surrounding area and how much of disturbance that would make.
Is this submitted?
Yes, this was included in the July
Yeah.
6th submission.
Do we need fire department opinion on that as well? I remember that was a big
Well, we're
topic.
going to refer it to the fire department. Question about the grade and the cuts and so forth on the driveway. I mean, is it a steady, I really don't remember walking it. I know it was steep, but is it a steady 17%? Is it up and down? Does it undulate?
It does undulate. Yeah.
So is it, some points is lower than 14, or is it, some points is higher than 17?
Yeah, it's definitely lower than 14. We have the
Are
entire
there,
profile.
is it places higher than 17?
No, 17 is the max.
Okay.
Should we bring this to the middle?
I don't know, you guys want to look at it closely? I mean, we've all got the copies.
But I think it'd be good to see.
So this is kind of the cut.
Near the building. This is, so this is the road entry. It's near the entry where it's steep.
Yeah.
And then it flattens out, and it flattens out further, and then.
So that middle section is under 17, under 14?
Yes.
The middle part there.
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
Until you get to the top, and it's,
A little more dramatic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was asking, is there any higher than 17, steeper?
This is the steepest.
The 17 is the steepest.
Yeah, that's, yeah, so
Right.
this
That's right, that's the beginning there, remember that?
Okay, anybody else?
Is the drainage in on that already? Did they already put storm drains in on either side?
It's swaled, it's not storm drain,
Well,
yeah.
all right.
Steve, because it does exceed the town code, some sort of a waiver, will we grant a waiver or something, or?
You can grant a waiver, but they have to show you that to bring it to 14 degrees would cause more, exactly, more disturbance of the site than leaving it as it is, so that
Okay.
it would convince you to grant that waiver.
Well, since Ron did mention particularly asking your advice on this, then I think this is something we incorporate in his memoranda to them about technical details. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I don't think you're going to be in a position to grant approval until you decide whether you can grant the waiver or not. I mean, we're just at the public hearing stage now. You
Right.
close that up, and I would think that the next thing is they're going to want to, it's up to them, of course. They could grade it and bring it to 14, in which case they don't need anything from you. You just approve the plan at the lower grade. They could, too, seek a waiver from you, in which case they're going to have to provide some information about what would be involved in the grading to bring it to 14, and if you feel that it's enough work, enough site disturbance that you want to grant a waiver, well, then you grant the waiver, and then you can grant them approval. Or they can apply to you for a waiver, say, we don't want to bring it to 14, and if you say, no, we won't grant the waiver, it's not going to cause that much site disturbance, then they can go to the ZBA and say, give us a variance. Those are their three options.
I must admit, sometimes these, extra steep roads are not very helpful during construction either. And so we could pass it by our GC and see what is, what's feasible. Yeah.
You're saying to make it easier on construction vehicles getting up there.
Right, because, trying to work there during wintertime, I can imagine it's not very productive to go up that hill.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that.
Anyone else from the board? Dave? Peter? No. Anyone from the public have comment? Yes, sir. State your name, please, and address.
My name is Abe Waxman. I live in Continental Village.
Yes.
My question to you is approximately how far is it from Old Albany Post Road to where the houses are? What's the approximate distance?
I think it was, let's see, 500. This is approximately 500. That's so 1,500.
About 1,500 to 2,000 feet.
Yes, around, yeah, under 2,000.
Is this approximately in a straight line, this road?
Could you keep the conversation to the microphone?
Oh, sorry. Is this road approximately a straight line? Because when you look up to it a little bit up, it starts turning to the left. So does it approximately stay in a straight line, or this is not to scale?
No, this is accurate, so
This is topographically accurate,
yes,
so it's approximately in a straight line.
approximately, we're not changing the driveway, it's an existing driveway, and
Okay.
you won't see up it directly.
Okay. Now, is this going to be a private road, or this is going to become a public road?
This is a private road, it's private property.
And who's going to? Okay, sorry. Okay. And who's going to maintain it? This is a very hilly place, and the rains and the melts and so on, the road
The owner will.
deteriorates it.
The owner will maintain it.
The owner, it's not going to fall on the public,
This is private property, it's a private driveway.
okay. Are there going to be additional public hearings on this?
This is the public hearing.
This is it? This is the only one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we'll take it as long as necessary. I mean, if you have additional comments, you can always put them in writing and submit them.
Okay. No, I just want to have a rough idea of what's happening here. How wide is the road going to be?
12 feet.
12 feet, okay. Thank you.
May I ask what your concern is?
Because I live on the other side, and I just wanted to have some idea what's coming at me, so.
Great.
I was mailed a notice that, about,
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? Additional comments? We have a memorandum from Ron Gaynor, our engineer.
Did we have another comment? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, that's quite all right. I didn't see any hands go up.
I am Radmila Rachko from 6 Wild Turkey Run. That driveway go from beginning to the end, his private driveway, go from beginning to the end of my property. My concern is, why it's not one house? Why it's another guest house? It's that commercial will be or residential?
Commercial or what?
Residential or commercial, because if you make a guest 3 rooms, look to me that this is like a small hotel. Maybe not, with the pool, and that will be a lot of traffic in the top of my house.
Well, the area's residential. I mean, would you care to answer or reply to that?
Why that 3 bedrooms not together in the house? Why is the reason? I have a big house.
Would you
And
respond?
all bedrooms it's in the house.
I'd be glad to answer.
Okay.
The clients are building the cottage first, so that, just so that they can phase it so they can afford the construction. But the intention is to have their mothers stay at that house, to live in that house. So it's a classic mother-daughter kind of relationship. So it's for family to stay there.
Extended family. And I should say they intend to be full-time resident. It's not, it's not.
Well, it's
their-
not a commercial, it's not its own commercial, so. Okay, ma'am? Huh? Anyone else? This was previously declared a major project. We did a site visit of it, and the application's been deemed complete. Ron said that it's represented unlisted action, and we don't have to do a coordinated review. There's a list of technical comments that Ron submitted, and we can't do any approvals now, but we can, if there's no further questions, Steve, close the public hearing. Anyone else? I'll make a motion ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And upon completion of these technical requests from our planner, we'll take it up at the next meeting. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, okay. We can address most of it before.
Do you want any of those rolls of plans back? My house is starting to get weighed down.
One of those 10 bedrooms.
Oh, boy. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me. Can we go back to the room, please? Go and get set up. Said he comes in the planning board, planning department. Third item of business is, it's old business, Manitou Properties, Route 90, Cold Spring, revised site plan which includes a reduction, isn't it not? A reduction in the size of the proposed building, a repositioning of the proposed addition to the main building, and related changes to the vicinity of both. Glenn?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to recuse myself as per last conversation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tara, so noted. We still have a quorum.
Ready?
Yes, go ahead.
Glenn Watson from Beatty and Watson. I'm here with Tim Resick, the architect for the project, as well as Mr. Marison and Mr. Roger, who are principals in the Manitou School. We're hopeful tonight that you'll see fit to set a public hearing for your September meeting or your August meeting, now that I understand you may have one. But just to run through the history of it, the first time you saw this application, you saw it with this roughly 7,000 square foot building proposed. We staked it out, you made a field inspection, we're concerned about the size of the building, concerned about the neighbors. More recently, you saw a modified plan, and I'm showing you the plan that, excuse me, where we reduced the building to probably less than half and instead proposed a small addition to the existing building. That's the plan that was submitted for this meeting. We were still concerned with the neighbors. Since this application was, this most recent submission was put in, we met with the neighbors and decided on a further revision, which is almost not visible. Okay. Take this off. Essentially, it's the same building as in the second submission, except it's been moved 4 feet further west and 6 feet north, and that with the commitment to maintain the screening between the two properties, the neighbors have said they will support the application. So from our original putting this application on the shelf, made a substantial reduction in the site disturbance, substantial reduction in the building site. It's now, and the way this happened was that the building was originally supposed to be a gymnasium and 4 classrooms, and it's now just a gymnasium. So that's really the whole story in a nutshell. We're just, you've made a site visit. You may want to make another one, at which point we'll stake that building out for you. But I think our application is otherwise complete, and respectfully ask that you set a public hearing at the next available meeting.
Anybody have any comments before we get to that stage? Steve?
Just one thing, the adjustment to the main building, you're going from 607 square feet to 770 square feet?
Tim, did we increase the size with the addition to the building?
So the addition to the building, what we did was, It's Tim Rasick from Yonker Rasick Architects. what we did was we took the classrooms out of the original proposed building, and we're currently adding them onto the existing building, so we could reduce the size of the proposed structure. And cumulative, I believe the area is a little bit less.
Between the gymnasium and the classroom addition, it's less square footage?
Yes, I believe so.
There's two buildings involved. The new building, which went down substantially, it was 6,000 some odd feet, now it's 2,600 feet. And then there's an addition to the existing building, which you're saying you repositioned?
No, that, in the previous application, it was not, we didn't have an addition. We wanted to remove the classrooms from the original building so we could reduce the size, and we're currently adding them on the back of the existing building.
All right, so you're making as opposed to the application that was before the board up till now, though, you're making one of the buildings bigger.
Yes.
I understand that overall it's less, but one of the buildings is being made bigger.
Correct.
Okay. Because the only thing about that is, I mean, if you just changed it so that there was less square footage altogether, I would say it doesn't have to go to county planning again. But if you're making one of the buildings bigger, even if there is an overall reduce in square footage, I think technically the change is significant enough it has to go to county planning again. That's not to say you can't schedule a public hearing, but I think we got to send it again.
I don't think there's any problem. We don't have a problem with the referral to town.
Okay.
We actually expected it.
Okay. So let's schedule a public hearing for we're planning an August meeting. Motion to set the public hearing for August. Second?
I'll second.
And we have to make referrals to Steve?
I think we did everything else as far as, we did a coordinated review on SECRA, made all the declarations. I think you just got to send the revised plan to county planning and you're set.
Okay. Tara, you do that. Okay. Motion's on the floor. All in favor? Aye. Do we think we need another site visit? Some of you weren't here the first time, were you? Maybe we should set a site, let's set a site visit anyway.
What do you want to do? I mean, I was going to say maybe just stake it out.
Yeah.
Okay, we can mark it out, you can go at your
Stake it
leisure and
out
see
and
what it is.
we'll
What I'll do is I'll mark the original proposal.
Right.
And I'll mark the reduced proposal, so you can get a sense of the scale of the change that was made.
Okay,
And
then
I'll
we
let you
don't-
know how we do it.
Then
so
we don't
you
have
can.
to set a formal site visit.
Okay.
Okay.
Fine.
I mean, and you'll stake out the addition
Yes.
to the existing building as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm okay with that if everybody.
Yes, anybody? Dennis?
That's good.
Good.
Yeah, and school's out, right? School's out, so.
I don't know, does this go around the calendar year?
We have a summer camp.
That's what I thought.
You guys can stop by.
We aren't going to get attacked by the kids? Okay.
It doesn't matter whether the stakes will last because they're in the
That's another
playground.
thing. Kids will be sword fighting with them.
Kids and bulldozer operators that get our stakes.
Did we take a vote on the public hearing?
Yes.
Okay. So that's it.
Okay. Consultants for Hudson Highlands Reserve are not here.
I'm going to jump with one with Chris Buck.
That's what I was going to ask you to do. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I think it's the southern end. It faces. Just please put the rest Yeah, yeah. Folks, let's conversation, please. We have this high-fidelity audio system here. Glenn?
Okay. It's an application of 1657 LLC, of which Chris Buck is the member. We're here with Mr. Buck and with Tim Moore, the architect for the project. Those of you who don't know the property, this is the former Patterson property. It's on 9D. It's actually directly across the street from the Manitou School. Manitou School entry is right here at the southeast corner of the property, right opposite the driveway. Today, there's a driveway that goes into the property and comes and circles into the Patterson house, which Patterson house is undergoing substantial renovation.
That driveway is the old original driveway, right? Because there's a second one been added.
Well, there's two driveways in. There's one off of Gilbo Lane.
Yeah.
Right, and I've been around here a while,
Oh,
but
right,
not as
that's
long as you. So,
Thanks.
so,
You're right, that's Gilbo. Okay.
and then the driveway that presently goes in services Susan Patterson's house and services the Judge Patterson's house, or his former house. That's right in here, and what's going on now is there's substantial renovations and restoration going on in the existing house. And the application before you is to make a substantial addition to the house, which will involve relocating the driveway and the approach to the property. It will involve relocating the secondary driveway into the property, substantial landscaping to the property, a new pool, a new clubhouse, utilizing an existing road, which will have to be rebuilt, to outbuilding a small office space for Mr. Buck to work from. This is, I believe in the pre-app meeting, we said this is a major project. At this point, what we're hoping tonight you'll do is refer this to the zoning board, because there's a 1,000-foot square, the garage is greater than 1,000 square feet. So for that reason, we're not eligible for approval without a variance for the proposed garage. So I'm hopeful tonight that you'll make a positive referral to the zoning board, so we can get there and get the variance we need. Other than that, I'll be happy to answer any questions I can, and if I can, I'll ask Tim to take a stab at it.
When I was talking about driveways before, there's another one off of 9D that comes up close with it looks like farm gates.
Further down,
Yeah.
Between this driveway, this is the original driveway with the two pillars that are kind of,
box.
yeah. Further down, Judge Patterson divided his property, and one of his daughters, Margaret, opted for a piece of property. So she got a piece of property that's south of Susan Patterson's property, and that's the driveway into her property.
Is that the one that's contiguous to Boscobel? Or doesn't go that far?
Actually, it's a little bit complicated, the shape of the properties here, in that Mr. Buck owns another piece of property that's separate that actually butts against the Boscobel property.
Okay.
But that's a separate piece.
Okay. Questions, anyone? Any comments, Steve?
No, one has a technical memo on this. Unless I missed it, it didn't mention the requirement for a variance. I saw your EAF said to be determined as far as the garage variance goes.
I thought that I saw some email from your office responding to his question about the 1,000-foot.
That was after the pre-application. Yeah, I think you do need to go. I just didn't see it in Ron's technical memo, that's all.
Right. It was discussed at the pre-app meeting. I'm surprised that, well, I know that the question about the size of the garage emerged at the pre-app meeting, and that's when it happened, so.
Okay. Guess we send the referrals to Putnam County Department of Planning, Department of Health, and Conservation Board.
Well, you want to do that, or you just want to send them to the ZBA? Do you want him to do both, Glenn, or?
Yeah, well, we should send it to
I don't see any
ZBA.
reason not to at this point. We're fully intending to come back, and considering the size of the property, I think we've got a pretty decent chance at the
All
at the
right, fine,
variance.
then that's fine, Andy, you can go ahead.
Okay. So I need a motion to send it to the zoning board of appeals. Second? Second. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wait a minute, don't you want them to declare it a major project?
Oh, yeah.
Listed action, going to do an uncoordinated review if you're going to go to the ZBA.
Yeah.
Make our 239M referral. I think this goes to DOH too, I think it's just a courtesy
Yeah,
referral.
DOH.
Okay, and fire department?
Yeah, I didn't put them in. Okay, we need a motion to declare.
Oh, and steep slopes should go to the CB too, you're absolutely right.
Declare this a major,
I think that, I mean, you may have to refer it, but I don't think there was a steep slope issue. I think you said quite the opposite.
All right, maybe I'm reading it wrong.
It says here, steep slope disturbances.
Yeah, I think he said that it was...
nearby it says it's
That's
not
what I think.
affected, right?
Further steep slopes exist on various portions of the property which will be disturbed for the home office construction and the new driveways proposed. Therefore, these disturbances will require the need for a special permit. So, I mean, unless Ron's got it wrong.
I feel like I read something.
I thought the memo that I read said something about because of the size of the
Yeah.
disturbance, or the steep slope that didn't qualify.
I mean, Chris Buck, residential, that's the right application, I think.
That's the right application.
I'm reading right from what Ron wrote, so I read up to the period. I mean, we can hold off sending it to the CB until you come back if you
Well,
want it.
I don't mind, if it gets, I've got to be at the Conservation Board meeting in August, so I'll just as soon go.
I was thinking about the wetlands portion that was. No, but I was mixing them.
I'm looking
Okay,
at the
I'll
bottom
stand
of the-
corrected, I'm sorry.
No, you're right, he's right.
So if that referral too would be good.
So first thing we want to do is declare it a major project. Declare it a major project.
Yes.
Second? Second. All in favor? Should we schedule a site visit? Yes. Barry, you got your calendar? Because we have to advertise it as well, so we need the time.
And Steve, do we have to declare an unlisted action?
Yes, declared an unlisted action, say you're going to be lead agency in an uncoordinated secret review.
All right, we covered a couple of dates. All right, declare an unlisted action. And
Lead agency in an
lead
uncoordinated
agency.
review.
I make a motion to make us lead agency in an unlisted action. What am I doing so far?
Uncoordinated review.
Okay.
Second to that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry.
And then the
Wait, date?
259M referral, DOH referral, fire
Yeah.
department, and CB.
Yeah, I delineated them for Department of Planning, Department of Health, Conservation Board, and well, that's for the garage size, and the fire department. I think that covers everybody.
What's the date of Ron's memo?
It's July 18th.
Yesterday.
Yes, just take it.
Well, I think it needs 10 days. You know, and you have to figure the month, it's got to be in by Monday.
It was different on the June. It was different on the first memo, that's the confusion.
Because Ron's leave.
No, it's what it is.
And vacation.
Oh, he's away on that, yeah.
And you don't really need to, just don't have problem. Really?
We done?
Well, let's ask around, what's the date? We usually do it on Sundays. We do it on Sundays.
You do them on Sundays?
Yeah.
Okay.
The first available Sunday?
30th, that doesn't give me enough time for notice, so the earliest you could do it would be the 6th.
Okay, anybody have their calendars out August 6th for site visit?
9:30 Sunday.
Okay. Everybody okay with that?
I will probably not be there. I've got That's fine. I don't want to stop.
Dennis?
I would like to attend this.
Okay.
Sunday?
Sunday, August 6th, 9:30.
And the public hearing is
Not yet.
Thursday. Oh, you're not public hearing, that's right. We're going back to zoning. Sorry.
Yeah. Motion to set the site visit for August 6th, 9:30. It's a Sunday.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Shall we make it again?
The one where I was,
Yeah, we did.
when I finally spit it out.
Okay. Graham. Hi. Full up. Look at, this is just one of them. Hudson Highlands Review, Reserve, Route 9 and Horton Road. Continued review, which includes a full EAF and revised preliminary drawings. But
You had your workshop last week on the EAF. We're expecting some discussion regarding the EAF. I don't know that we did submit revised plans in accordance, and changing the road and do that, but I don't think we're at the point where that needs to be discussed. I think moving on with the revised EAF, with the Part 2 of the EAF is where we're at.
yeah. What I'd like to get Graham Tatchell to just review what we did at the workshop and where we are on this Part 2.
Good evening, Graham Trelstead from AKRF. So at the workshop last Thursday, we did go through the EAF Part 2 section by section and discussed amongst the board and its consultants how it wanted to respond, and I summarized that in a memorandum to the board dated July 18th. Hopefully you got that all this time, got everybody's correct email addresses. What I did in that memorandum was capture the intent of the board. I hope I captured that correctly in using EAF Part 2, where we differentiated between no or small impact may occur or moderate to large impact may occur. It just became the kind of sense of the board that the moderate to large impact may occur is simply an indication that you wanted additional information from the applicant. So it wasn't really a judgment at that point in terms of the significance of impact, but just requesting more information. So we went through the entire EAF Part 2, and we got all the way through the end, but then the last section we did have a couple of questions that I was going to research in the DEC's EAF workbook. And as I indicated in the memo, I did reach out to Jim Eldred at DEC to ask some questions. I did look at the EAF workbook, and unfortunately I didn't get clarity on that. So the last question is the consistency with community character. And if I recall correctly, at item B, the proposed action may create a demand for additional community services, e.g. schools, police, and fire. And last Thursday, it had been my recollection that the EAF workbook contained certain thresholds that would guide us in terms of how many residential units would have to be constructed before you would begin to see an impact. And my memory was not correct. So there is no specific guidance. There is no threshold in the EAF workbook for how many houses could be constructed. I did provide for you a quick calculation in my memo of the number of school-age children that could theoretically be generated by 25 homes of 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, and 5-bedroom, and I just, to give you a range, I calculated the rate for 3-bedroom houses, 4-bedroom, and 5-bedroom, using the highest value that's derived. These numbers are derived from U.S. Census Bureau data from the Rutgers Center for Urban Policy Research. So it's good numbers. It's specific to New York State and new construction. And that quick calculation revealed that 25 houses could generate between 12 to 26 public school age children. So it's 1 to 2 children per grade, roughly. So I'm giving you that as kind of information, context for you, so we can further this discussion and decide how we would complete item number 18, consistency with community character. My memo also captures, hopefully accurately, any of the locations in the EAF Part 2 where the board decided to change the applicant's response in EAF Part 2 from no or small impact to moderate to large. So that would capture that in the record as well.
Anyone have before them the original Part 2 that was filled out by the applicant? I've got the revised one after our workshop. Significant number of moderate to large impacts in things such as surface water, flooding, groundwater, and so forth. By the action we take to accept Part 2, would it compel the applicant to start the work on Part 3, is that correct?
That's correct.
And then who would actually draw it up? They would make a draft, and then the planning board would be responsible for the final drawing of Part 3?
The applicant typically prepares the additional materials or the Part 3.
Yeah.
It is your responsibility as the lead agency under SECRA to ensure that the information contained in Part 3 is to your satisfaction.
All right.
So when they submit the material for your review, if you disagree with some of the conclusions they draw from the evidence, then you can ask them to change that.
All right.
The combination of Part 2 and Part 3 forms the basis for your determination of significance.
Okay.
So you would have to be sure that it provides the evidence supporting your conclusions and it accurately expresses your conclusions. We would obviously have the ability in the determination of significance itself to clarify or to further express your understanding of the material, so that if you felt that either the EAF was not clear or did not fully express your belief, we could do that in the determination of significance as well.
Neil.
So this is both for you, Graham, and for Steve. My reading of the SECRA guiding the process document that the State Department of Environmental Permits puts together, Division of Environmental Permits puts together, is that it is our document, Part 3, that is authored by this body.
That's correct.
And so how do we ensure that the inputs to that authoring activity, however that's done collectively, are the combination of the multiple voices, e.g., clearly the applicant, but as well we have received some very thoughtful comments from our Conservation Board. We've received some thoughtful comments from Hudson Highlands Land Trust, which has standing as being one of the few entities that could actually accept the easement that may come out of this, town being another one. But how do we ensure that we have the totality of the objective fact base that comes from multiple voices that have different opinions, as opposed to what I heard you say was the applicant writes Part 3 and we have to decide to accept or reject? That's a very different authoring activity than one that has multiple voices that have from different vantage points.
Sure. It's not a straightforward accept or reject. You receive the Part 3, you review it, and because you do have the requirement to make that your voice, you can direct the applicant to make certain changes. typically the applicant will go ahead and do that. Again, the way that the regulations are written, the way that the EAF is structured, it does say that it's the responsibility of the lead agency to complete that, right? But the practice is that an applicant would complete that. But it is your obligation under SECR to make sure that it is complete, accurate, and that it fully expresses your beliefs.
I agree with Graham saying, I'd phrase it a little differently. I mean, what happens with a Part 3 is you've identified some potential significant adverse environmental impacts in your Part 2. Part 3, you ask the applicant to address those potential significant adverse environmental impacts, and they go out and they put together studies and come up with facts and plans to explain why they're already been mitigated. Either there won't be, they won't occur, or to the extent they might occur, they've already been mitigated to the maximum extent practicable. There's no need to go through the EIS process. It's been you've taken a hard look at it and you've made a determination. So they're going to provide all that factual data to you. You are entitled to say, I'm not happy with this factual data because I think there's this and that and the third thing wrong with it. Go back and do a further study on this. Or if you don't do that, then we're going to find that you haven't mitigated we need more information. You haven't shown that the potential significant adverse impacts have been mitigated, and you're going to go through an EIS. So you hold their feet to the fire as far as what the facts are, and you know, that they have to come back with. There come a point when they say, that's it, that's all we're going to do, those are the facts, end of story, you know, and you are free to accept that, but the conclusions in the document when you adopt the Part 3 are your own. You do not have to accept their conclusions, and those conclusions may lead you to adopt a positive declaration and start up the EIS process. You may agree and accept, but the Part 3 becomes yours only when you adopt it.
Let me ask my question one slightly differently then. If you taking what you both are saying, which is fairly consistent, the applicant drafts the Part 3, which there was a version of it we saw that you guys all said was too drafty. I think this was Mr. Gross's point. It was too drafty to actually be read at the point. But regardless, they drafted a version. Oh, okay. But there are other voices with different sentences, with different perspectives that have to be weaved into that because, as I read in this thing, the quote is, the subject of the sentence is the lead agency should describe all potential benefits, impacts, excuse me. So for us to author that as the primary writer of said thing, even if we get a script or draft script from someone else, we've got other things we've got to weave in. What's that authoring process?
Well, you would say to them, for example, I've heard from, and I don't mean to pick on them, but, you know, Hudson Highland Land Trust. And they have concerns about, you can pick anything you like as far as what might be a potential significant environmental impact. And we don't think you've adequately addressed that in your Part 3. Go out and do a study, do a report, get us the facts to show us why this concern has been mitigated to the maximum extent practicable. And they should go out and do that. But they may turn around and say, gee, we really can't, that's not a legitimate concern, we're not going to. And if they do that and you still feel it's a legitimate concern, you're going to wind up adopting a positive declaration saying, there's this other concern, it hasn't been demonstrated in Part 3 that it's mitigated to the maximum extent practicable, we're going to go through an EIS. So that's how you weave it in. You would raise it, you get it from the third party if it's raised by a third party, and you put it to them that issue has to be addressed in order to complete the Part 3.
I have, one of the things I think in my mind is working, that the conclusions they made on the original drafting of the Part 2, and then on number 7, impact on plants and animals, the Conservation Board brought up specific contradiction. I'm just wondering, the original conservation analysis, for just in particular, the Indiana bat and the northern bat. I mean, the Conservation Board draws a quite different conclusion than was originally put out by the applicant. Now, is that symptomatic of the things we should be looking for when they draft the Part 3?
I think that, as I recall, when we discussed that section last week, we changed a number of the boxes from no to small to moderate to large, indicating your desire to get that additional information. So I think,
in line with what Neil said, I mean, if other agencies, Land Trust, the Conservation Board, and others point out things that the original conservation analysis concluded, we bring that into the mix of approving Part 3.
Yes.
That's what I'm asking.
As the lead agency under SECRA, you do have an obligation to consider not just the facts that you would need to use to base your determination on the action before you, the conservation subdivision, but any other actions by any other agency that comes after you. So if the Conservation Board has expressed concern about the potential impacts to threatened or endangered species, even though they may have a greater knowledge of that area, because you are the lead agency, you have the obligation to ensure that the documentation in Part 3, in the determination of significance, et cetera, fully analyzes that, right? So that's what SECRA places that obligation on the lead agency in a way that tries to make the process a little bit more efficient, so that when you do an uncoordinated review, right, then each individual agency has to do its own secret compliance, right? Under coordinated review, you're taking on the obligation, but then that obligation comes with the responsibility to think broadly. So the questions that you're asking, that Mr. Zuckerman is asking, is absolutely in the intent of SECRA that the lead agency take that burden seriously to look at the broad scope of potential impacts and ensure that you've got enough information and that other boards after you have enough information to make that determination. Now, since it is a coordinated review, your determination of significance is binding on the other agencies, right?
Yeah, it looks like you got.
Sorry, one more then, I apologize. If, let's say, a sentence is in the Part 3 that the applicant drafts on our behalf, we just fundamentally disagree with. We say, we think literally the exact opposite conclusion, for example. That is, let's say the sentence says, that is not a problem, we think it is a problem. Are we to cross it out as an editing process since it's our document and rewrite it? And if so, how is that drafting process done? Just like, is it like the workshop where we're gonna sit around a table and take out red pens and edit? Like, what is the method by which we do that? I'm sorry I'm getting so tactical, but it seems like there was pages and pages of commentary that we may agree with some, we may not care about others, we may disagree with others because of the various voices. How do we do that editing process?
So you can direct the applicant to do that. If it's as simple as change this to say this instead, or remove this sentence, that is your directive to the applicant. Now they're acting as your scribe in that instance,
That seems like
right?
a very strange role to tell someone else we don't agree with your opinion, so please put what we want in there. That seems like a very strange.
That is the way it works. Now the applicant could take offense to that and say, no, we're not going to change that, but then, as Mr. Gaba presents, then you could then say, well, then we have not come to a conclusion on this. We either can't come to a determination of significance, or we'll issue a positive declaration because we don't think that sufficient information is presented in the EAF Part 3 for us to decide that there are no impacts. I've represented one applicant, one planning board many years ago where we were drafting a final environmental impact statement. You know, the planning board had issued a positive declaration, and we're now developing the final environmental impact statement, which is, again, the responsibility of the lead agency, but it's typical that the applicant and the consultants for the applicant prepare the draft. The planning board objected to certain language, and we advised the planning board to make those changes, and the applicant refused. So the applicant was directed by the planning board to send us, as the village's consultants, the files, and we took over the authorship. And that was the planning board's purview under SECRA when it was preparing a final environmental impact statement. Now, the regulations are not as specific when it comes to preparing a determination of significance, right? But I believe, and I don't know, Mr. Gavin might have a differing opinion on this, or a slightly modified opinion, I believe that same spirit of collaboration exists with the limitations that you've already identified, that if there's a disagreement, there's no clear way to make that determination. But I think the applicant would clearly understand that if you are upset with the language,
I think upset's the wrong word.
If you had a different opinion,
because some of those statements were statements of fact, and some of the statements are statements of opinion.
Correct.
Or interpretations of the facts.
Right.
So I think that's
right.
Those are.
I've never seen an applicant refuse a request to change language, but what I have seen is boards disagree with the conclusions in the Part 3. Right. And what the boards have done in those instances is when they adopt the Part 3, the resolution conditions it upon, but we disagree with this, we disagree with this, we disagree with this, and find that positive declaration should issue.
So the technique is not to change the authoring, it's to make an errata sheet, if you will.
You could do either way, but, you know, the bottom line is, when you adopt it, it's going to say what your findings are.
Right.
It's very helpful. Thank you for that. I realize that was probably painful, but thank you.
I think I'm all right.
Okay, now, Steve, the next step in this is,
Vote to adopt the,
yeah, we've got the revised EAF in front of us, Part 2, correct?
We should probably just complete section 18,
Oh,
consistency with
yeah.
community character.
Oh, yeah.
We don't want to have an incomplete record here.
Oh, God,
so,
no.
Again, this is, we weren't sure, and it was getting late last Thursday when we got to this, and I think we just decided, let's see if we can get some additional guidance. The question is the proposed project is inconsistent with the existing community character, yes or no? And then if yes, do any of those other criteria kind of qualify? And I think the question was most specifically, I think it was Mr. Hardy that brought it up, you know, the demand for additional community services and whether 25 homes could add substantial demand for community services. And again, the DEC workbook doesn't provide substantial guidance. I did the school calculations, you know, again, I think it was 12 to 26 school-age children, you know, 1 to 2 per grade. You know, you could then make a determination on whether that is potentially a moderate to large impact, or if you would like additional information on that, or if you'd like additional information on potential impacts to police or fire, or to any of the other criteria there within that category.
Do we see no on the rest of the items? A through F?
You know, I don't. We didn't get to that, but if you'd like, I mean, we could just follow that same process from last week. So A is the proposed action may replace or eliminate existing facilities, structures, or areas of historic importance to the community. You know, aside from the historically eligible structures on the property, they're not replacing them or eliminating them. So, is that a no?
I'd say.
Okay. So B, well, let's skip over B because that's the one of question.
Just a second.
Okay.
On that, so I'm understanding this. I had a question about the repurposing of the historic barn, right? And is that, and you know, what that means in terms of like, you know, being a historic structure, and then if you, you know, if you change it substantially or cover up the structure of it, which what my understanding was that was the important part of it, then have you done something that hurts the community, the ability of the community to assess this historic importance?
Right.
I'm not saying this very well, but then does that change things so that category, that A part, would go to moderate?
Okay, so let me answer it by giving you some context here. In Section 10 of EAF Part 2, Impact on Historic and Archaeological Resources, we did check no for the proposed action may occur wholly or partially within or substantially contiguous to any buildings, archaeological site, or district which is listed on or has been nominated by New York State Board of Historic Preservation for inclusion on the state or National Register of Historic Places. So we indicated there, or you as the planning board indicated there, that you weren't as concerned. Yes, there are some structures on the property. They've been assessed. They've determined to be potentially eligible, but they are not going to destroy them. So in one section of the EAF, we've said, no, not a concern. I think what you're asking now is, even if you're not modifying the historic structures so they lose historic integrity, are you changing the historic structure in a way that affects the community character? Are those buildings currently being used by the community in any way?
No,
Okay.
they're just a resource. But my understanding was, tell me if I'm wrong, is that barn was going to be used for something else. It was going to be used for
I'd have to turn to the applicant now.
That's right. The idea is to, we had in our team an architect who had a degree in readaptive use. This is a barn from 1820, from that era, and the size of the barn and the character of the building is just not suitable for modern uses. But it is an entire field of architecture to use, to do adaptive reuse. Very common in the Hamptons, and barns from 1800s, they have become the town hall in East Hampton. So we pretend to use it as part of our program. We don't know yet how, but we know that we are protecting this structure, and we know that we want to reuse it in some fashion. Protecting the historic integrity, that's the whole point.
I have a simpler answer. If you look at page 7 of the part 2, the continuation of question number 10, there we did check off moderate to large impact, addressing that very question.
I'm sorry, you're absolutely correct. Under other, yes. Yeah, so we will be getting some more information on that. Thank you.
We're covering it.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
That's a simpler answer. All right.
Okay, so does that change the board's desire then for A, to change that from no or smaller impact may occur to moderate to large, indicating consistency with Section 7 and the desire to see additional information?
Wasn't at the, I'm sorry, at the very beginning of this, which I wasn't even here, let's say halfway through the process, when one of the assessments was done, wasn't it pointed out that there were some unique architectural features to that barn? And
yes.
So those will be preserved in the process of this architect who takes advantage of these types of things.
And we are going to address that in more detail, because we did, like I said, we did check off moderate to large impact. So that kicks us into the part 3, so we can give you a more descriptive analysis exactly what's going to be happening. So we're not going to ignore that. We're going to address it.
Okay.
So we're checking that out as moderate to large impact.
All right.
On question number 10, not.
Oh, on 10, okay, I'm sorry.
Not 18. So we already did it in question number
Right.
Well, yeah,
right.
so question number 10 is to the historic integrity of the building, right?
Yes.
This is now a separate question, which is the community character. And I think that's where I was asking the question, is the building currently used by the community in any way? Is it, for example, such as this building, used for community meetings, community purposes? My reason for asking that then is that perhaps then it is not of historic importance to the community character, which is what item 18 is,
Yeah,
right?
the question is whether, or at least my question is that if something, if you have a structure like that was just discovered during this process, mm-hmm. and it has some importance or something like so forth, but it's not something that's often visited or even understood or appreciated by the community, then does that mean that that changing it so that it's not, that it loses its sort of value doesn't matter in this section?
I think it's those questions that you're asking are more germane to Section 7, which is section page 7, Section 10.
Okay, all right.
I think the difference is, yes, there is potential value to the community in the continued existence of that barn,
right,
and the integrity of that barn, and material, workmanship, whatever. There's value to the community that it just exists, and that's what's covered in Section 10 on page 7. This really relates to, is it a facility, structure, or area that has been used by the community historically over time? So of historic importance to the community, not necessarily historic architecture, historic preservation, it's over time. So look at it that way. So are you removing, has that barn and the surrounding field been the location of a community fair every year since 1862?
I see the distinction now, so
Right.
that's why we can do one thing on one part of it, and I get it, okay.
Correct. All right, so let me go back and ask the board again. Previously, we had said no to that, and then we went on this discussion. Are we comfortable with keeping it at no? Knowing that in section 10 we've addressed it? Okay, so no impact there. Okay, so we're jumping over B just because we need to come back to that. C, the proposed action may displace affordable or low-income housing in an area where there's a shortage of such housing.
No, I would say no, it's not displacing, and it's...
Very good. D, the
Does the
proposed
board
action
agree?
may interfere with, I'm sorry?
I just did a quick survey with board members.
Oh, okay. All right. D, proposed action may interfere with the use or enjoyment of officially recognized or designated public resources. This is private property, from what I understand, so probably no. You're comfortable with no. Okay.
I like that quote, I don't know, it was on the Conservation Board, it said uninvited fishermen.
Yes, the uninvited.
We're still not going to invite them, is that it?
All right. Question E, the proposed action is inconsistent with the predominant architectural scale and character. No?
I think it's unknown at this point. I wouldn't be able to state what the architectural style is. At least I don't recall the last time we talked about.
So maybe we could ask for additional information in that regard as well.
I don't know, David. You were supposed to say something. Sorry.
I'd like to ask if there's definition in this town, in that area, of a predominant architectural scale and character. I mean,
There seems to be a wide variety.
Yeah.
Different eras,
So
different
it's not
architectural
predominant,
styles.
there's a wide variety, there's no predominant.
I'm sorry?
It's a wide variety, as you said, but there's nothing predominant.
Correct. Right. So you could use that logic to basically say that it fits in with the diverse character and then say no to small. Or you could suggest, as Mr. Zuckerman was saying, that maybe we should ask for some more information on this because you haven't seen any. I think the applicant has indicated an intent to create structures that are, in keeping with the Hudson Valley character or whatever it might have been. If you want to see some sample architecture, sample facade drawings, that could be of relevance here.
How does the board feel about this? On 18E?
Can I add something?
Sure.
So preparing a schematic set of drawings for a project of this scale is significant expense. And we hope that, we're trying to get the lot count and the layout, and there are many things that we're trying to get before we start producing schematic designs for our facility. So if possible, we would like to just assume that it will be a nice new facility for horses. I do have a bunch of precedents that I would like to show to the board at a different, maybe through a package that we send, or actually I have a presentation, but there's no screen here. Oh, okay. So the presentation is there. Yes. So if the board needs more information about the character of the buildings that we're proposing, the answer is that we are not even there. So we have not spent money proposing. We know that there's an indoor barn and there are many kinds of it. So that's.
Excuse me, does that mean that thus when we get part 3, when we don't have sufficient information at this point, kind of like holding a public hearing before we know whether or not something is going to, the correct amount of information the public should know, can we go back to this and say, we have an issue now. You're making 50,000 square foot houses in a neighborhood of cottages.
I think I might want to put Mr. Gaba on the hot seat here.
No problem. That you can revoke a negative declaration if you need, if there, new information comes to your attention which demonstrates that what you based it on was in fact not a fact.
You mean revoke a positive deck?
We didn't have
You can revoke a negative declaration, you could revoke a positive if you wanted. I've never heard of that happening. But usually what happens is a negative declaration, it takes place, they say there's not going to be.
A pos deck.
Well, if necessary, more likely you'd revoke it and ask for more information so
Okay.
that you could find out what the situation was. I got to tell you, you know, I appreciate the board needs to look at this very closely, and I think you're doing a great job, you know, but you may be parsing this just a little too fine. I mean, overall, the development of 25 homes, if that's what the lot count comes out to, and a horse farm is probably not inconsistent with the community character of Philipstown, just as an overall broad concept. I understand there's aspects of it that you're going to want to look at. So, I mean, you can go down these, and if you want to check, if you're really concerned about it, moderate to large, and ask them to look at something in particular, that's fine. But if not, I would just go no to small, and if you later find out that they plan on 3-story all-steel buildings or something, you know, that's just baroque, that you feel just would be out of place, looks like it dropped out of the sky into Philipstown, then you could reopen it. But I think for now, you know, they say they're going to be nice single-family homes. You know, you kind of take them at their word instead of saying, hey, show us a bunch of architectural renderings.
So the point is that you can reopen it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But you have to have good reason. It has to be rational basis for it. Something that you did not have before that now comes up.
Okay, so the board's opinion or feeling on 18E. We were just talking about the predominant architectural scale and character. No or small? Or Dave?
That's okay.
All right, yeah,
Okay. No or small on E.
that's on E.
On
yes.
E, yeah. And then finally, F, the proposed action is inconsistent with the character of the existing natural landscape. And here I just point out that what we're trying to do is obviously, what the applicant is trying to do, I'm sorry, it's not we, a conservation subdivision. Right. So the purpose of that is to try to make it as consistent with the natural landscape and the features of the natural landscape as possible. Obviously, we haven't, you as the board haven't accepted that the layout does achieve those objectives. But you know, that's the purpose of the analysis in the first place. So I guess we are asking for additional information in the review of this. So the applicant will be providing additional information on the consistency with the natural landscape. So checking that moderate to large would then be consistent with the review, but you could also say that, you know, the purpose of the conservation analysis, so far as they reach it, would be to be consistent with the natural landscape. So you could also check no. I could see it going both ways.
Plus, we're also addressing all the individual pieces of that issue and all the other questions.
Correct.
Any opinion of the board on 18F? Okay.
No small.
Okay. What possible, on 18G, what possible other impacts did you foresee?
I think that if this were a non-residential, and let's put aside the fact that there's going to be the equestrian center for just a moment, if this were a non-residential application that might generate noise or activity that was different from what you would normally experience with a residential, if you were presenting an outdoor concert facility, then that could be something that you could say that's not consistent with the community character. The character of that area is residential, it's quiet, it's whatever. If you were introducing a use that had significant levels of activity, people coming in on a Saturday as an event location, not for music, but maybe you know, arts and crafts or whatever it might be, you could make that determination too. So community character is a composite of activity, impacts such as noise, even odors. So with the equestrian center, which is somewhat like an agricultural use in many respects. Is that sufficient to cause it to change or be inconsistent with the character of the rest of Philipstown? Philipstown itself being a rather diverse community in terms of the land uses you have, the size of the properties, the age of properties, and some of the uses that might exist on those properties, whether they be cultural institutions, agricultural uses, et cetera. So I think those are the things you could weigh in G, other, as it relates, I think, specifically to the equestrian center. I think the residential, that would fit in, as Mr. Gabbett was suggesting, it fits in with the residential character, the overall residential character of Philipstown.
Anyone on the board want to address that, particularly the equestrian center? No? Shall we mark this as, well, it says other impacts. We're not putting any other impacts, so we'll just mark it as a no.
That sounds reasonable.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so that gets us back to question B. The proposed action may create a demand for additional community services, e.g. schools, police, and fire.
So in your research about the number of children, I mean, we got that school-age children and so forth. Just as an example, then what do we use for a standard of demand here?
Demand for police and fire, for example, or
for schools.
Well, yeah, schools. The demand is the 12 to 26.
For any of those things. I mean, I just don't know what a threshold level would be that the fire department would go, holy cow, there's 24 more houses, or the school system will go 5 more third grader. I don't know.
Right. I think generally when you're changing the population of community by more than 5%,
oh, right. I think
that's where you'd probably say, that's something we should consider. When you're adding 12 to 26 school-age children to a population, forgive me, I don't know the total enrollment of the schools.
You can add 5%, for every group that comes through, like along, as long as it's not at the same lump.
Yes, now you're getting into an issue of potential cumulative effects, right? And I think that there's a general determination, belief that when you're looking at an individual project like this, you're basing it on the potential of that project for impact.
Yeah, as a
25
sort of
homes.
point thing.
Right. And any known or reasonably foreseeable future actions that are being taken by others. So, if we knew, for instance, that right next door to this property was a 500-acre piece of land and there were going to be 500 houses on that, each generating a certain number of school children, each generating additional demand on the police and fire, then we could say, well, taken together, the cumulative effect might be. I've just been listening to your agenda tonight, and I haven't seen large applications for new housing projects, large applications for commercial properties that might increase the demand. So if you were to ask my opinion on this, I would suggest that the addition of 25 homes and a private equestrian center would probably not generate substantial new demand on the police, fire, volunteer ambulance corps. Yes, somebody in these homes could call for assistance, but the addition of 25 homes in a community that has however many homes Philipstown has would probably not be a substantial increase. And again, it's not a use that is different from or would have a strikingly different use that might increase. If this were not an equestrian center but a fireworks factory, then I might say you might want to consider that potential effect. I'm sorry if I'm being glib on that, but it kind of gets to the point, right? So, if you were to ask my opinion, I don't know if you are, I'm kind of being bold here, I would suggest that the addition of 25 homes with a private equestrian center would not have that increase in demand. It's not of a scale that's large enough, even in a community such as Philipstown. or especially in a community such as Philipstown, because you really have to view it against the context in which it's located.
Right.
So if I were filling this out, I would fill it out no and feel comfortable in that, knowing that you have asked the applicant for a substantial amount of additional information that they'll provide in Part 3 that will frame that overall context for you.
If I can add into one of the other criteria that's often looked at is whether or not every project creates some amount of new community demand. Every project you build a single house. That single house can make a call to the fire or police. So every single action always creates some amount of community demand. One of the things that is often looked at is, will the project create enough of demand to require new hire? Like, for instance, in the schools. Is there enough of an impact on generating new school children that they're going to have to hire a new teacher or a new police officer or something like that? And that's a very common benchmark to use. But I'm going to agree with Graham. I've never seen a project this small require additional study.
Okay. Feeling of the board? Dennis?
I go with no, to be honest.
Neil?
Yeah.
I agree. Okay, so we've completed 18 and we've completed the...
Right, so it looks like 18, the entirety is all no's.
Right.
So I'll then add that into this document and recirculate it for you. So that completes the EAF Part 2.
So now the action on this board is to accept this and direct the applicant to complete...
Yeah, I think accept is the proper verb. Adopt?
Adopt.
It's yours.
Motion to adopt Part 2 of the EAF?
I'll make that motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we need to direct the applicant to begin the Part 3? Steve?
I don't know that you need a resolution on it. I mean, they're gonna do it. If you want to adopt a resolution, adopt a resolution. It's up to you. That doesn't really matter. If you want to, go ahead and
be our guest.
In that regard, we know one of the issues here is traffic, and we have an initial traffic study. We have initial comments by AKRF. It would be our intention to try to make to meet with AKR, have our traffic people meet with AKRF's traffic people to go through the mutual reports. We believe that there's some material in their report that is quite relevant and should be answered, and other stuff that is not relevant and not necessary. So we would like to have the opportunity to meet with them to come to a mutual concern, a mutual agreement as to the scope of that particular report. And we respectfully ask that we be given permission to do that, or at least noted on the record that we want to do that.
So that's a question. I have here a memo from AKRF regarding the traffic impact study of June 30th. And now is this a page and a half? I mean,
That's exactly the memo I'm talking about. That was in response to what we submitted with the suggested Part 3.
Yeah.
And we think there are in some instances that goes overboard, and we think it makes a number of good points, and we'd like to separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. And we think to do that mutually with them will be beneficial to both of us. It'll save us some time and some effort and some money, and it'll save you some time and some effort, not so much money.
Does the board have any problem with that? Okay.
Thank you.
I'd actually like to then, in some ways, take that notion and maybe move that broader, which is there's probably some value at some point, and back to my commentary earlier in questions, having the land trust have some input into the Part 3, maybe even the Conservation Board have a look at the Part 3 as it's being developed. I think that would be in the spirit of trying to create the most objective, or at least most complete viewpoint that this document is supposed to achieve. And given that the memo is written to date, at least I perceive to be very different viewpoints from the different parties, I think it'd be useful to have some involvement. And if AKRF is one good source, I don't know if the other two are not.
We don't have any trouble reaching out to them on certain things, that's fine.
Sorry, Glenn.
I don't see any problem if we feel the need to reach out for them at certain points and to say, you made this comment in this letter, tell us how you justified that point, and because we see it entirely differently.
Right, and that's, I guess, that's the struggle
don't
we're
have
going to face, was that very thing. So your help in that would be very appreciated.
HHLT is a private organization. I don't think I need your permission to do that, but...
Of course not. And you're on the board.
Yeah. Well, not now.
For this,
Not for this meeting.
Oh.
And I'm not on the board when I'm at their meetings either, when they talk about this.
That must be confusing to be so many people at once.
Okay.
If I may, just.
we call him civil.
Yeah, Rick
Oh, civil, yes.
Yeah, Rick O'Rourke, attorney for the applicant. The exercise of going through the Part 2 is one that varies from board to board throughout the state of New York. You've gone through this very carefully and comprehensively. When it comes to the Part 3, I think in the spirit of moving this project along within the guidelines, clearly we are going to respond to everything that's been indicated, moderate to large impact, as well as address some of the comments that have been received from the public and other organizations. There are a couple comments that, quite frankly, I think once we approach them and answer them, it'll become clear that some are appropriate and some are not in terms of the practice and procedure and the process that you undergo through SECRA. So I just wanted to say that, but we are going to address it. We have to, and we will. Thank you.
Please, Michelle. 3 minutes, we cut you off.
Michelle Smith, Hudson Highlands Land Trust. I just wanted to follow up on a letter that we sent on July 5th, which addressed a number of areas. Quite a few of them, in terms of the environmental impacts, are being addressed through the EAF process. But there are a couple, and there were a couple of questions that were asked last week at the workshop that we said at the workshop we would defer until the planning board's attorney was here. But so the two outstanding questions that it appears may not be addressed through the EAF process are the lot count issue, and we have raised the issue of the two methods of calculating the number of units. To date, the process has relied solely on the use of the density formula. And the code does say if there's a reasonable basis for the planning board to conclude that the yield plan would produce a significantly different lot count, then the planning board has the right under the code to ask for a yield plan. And what our concern is that we haven't seen a discussion of whether or not there is a reasonable basis to conclude that the yield plan would result in a different number of units. And we would very much like to see a discussion of whether or not there is a reasonable basis. We think that based on the fact that a lot of the conserved area is undevelopable and a lot of the developable area is being developed in 1 acre lots, that you could do a small amount of analysis to get to whether or not there is a reasonable basis. And I understand the applicant's concern about having to go back and do a lot of work. So we would hope that there's some way, without the applicant doing a lot of work, additional work, that there's a way to at least come to the conclusion about whether you have a reasonable basis to conclude that the yield plan would result in significantly lower units. One of the reasons we're really concerned about this is because we're worried about setting precedent for future conservation subdivisions where there potentially is a big disconnect between what the yield plan gives and what the density formula gives. So we have very grave concerns that in this, the first conservation subdivision, there may be a big disconnect between the yield plan and the density formula, and that hasn't even been discussed. So that's the first thing that we think may not make it into the EAF process and needs to be discussed. And the other is the legal question that was raised last week was whether or not there would be a public hearing before the secret determination. So I would hope that we could have an answer to those two things.
Well, the discussion of the yield plan was new to me, and I'd like to have the distinction between them clarified. And just the point you just made is why one or the other, and why the density plan was done first and not the yield plan and so forth. I don't know how many of the board members have really much of an idea beyond that. I think at some point soon we need to discuss it, at least get in our heads what the difference is. And Steve has already, I think, started to address the other legal point you were talking about. So I think the sooner we can get into some of these, I don't know if that's germane to the EAF or not.
Well, I can tell you that if you read the reason we chose the density formula was because it is far less expensive and far less onerous. If you read through the regulations, you'll see that basically you have to engineer the entire subdivision. You have to do test wells. You have to do all the testing necessary for health department approval. It's a significant amount of money. We roughed it out that it would be approximately an additional somewhere between $130,000 and $150,000 just to do this yield thing properly.
168 is your quote.
Was that my quote? Okay.
163,000.
160.
Okay, I don't want to
Okay.
get bogged in that.
So that was that weighed heavily on our decision. Now I understood that Michelle is suggesting that perhaps you can do something less than a yield plan. Right. Well, if it's a yield plan, those things have to be done, we don't allow for the zoning law doesn't allow for that process. So I would be very concerned that we put together a basic layout where we watched the grades for the road and got the lot sizes correct, and then somebody said, well, where's the test wells? And okay, we'll go into a test well. And then somebody say, well, what about your septic systems? And we got 25 septic systems to do. So I would be if it were clear that you could do what we used to in the old days called a sketch map and essentially a master plan, that would be one thing. But when we're faced with the task of a yield plan, it's really significant.
Okay.
Well, Glenn, like I said in my letter, I mean, you could do, like we used to do in the old days, a sketch map. This is how big the lot is, and this is how big the size of the permitted lots are, and you have quite a bit of information about the environmental constraints and the building constraints on this property. And I gotta believe that smart people like you have, and smart people like our consultants, are gonna be able to come up with some methodology to get at least a rough idea of what kind of lot count you'd wind up with under a yield plan. And if it's close to 24, 25 lots, then you put the issue to bed. But if it looks like it's 13 lots, then we had a problem.
And it's our responsibility to make sure there's not that big divergence in the numbers.
Well, that's what the code calls for. You need a reasonable basis, as Mr. O'Rourke points out, but I don't know how you have a reasonable basis unless you take a look.
Well, if I may, just two things. And I understand the discussion, but as you said, Steve, in your letter, you have to make a determination of why the yield plan is necessary. The code provides for or density plan or yield plan. That's what it said. Yeah. So we chose to go down the path of a density plan. Now, the issue that's being raised is that in addition to that, you're saying to us, do a density plan and a yield plan, and that is because in the code, and I don't want to misquote, if the planning board has a reasonable basis to believe that the number of units that would result from a yield plan would be substantially less than a number allowed by the density formula. I haven't, when I say the analysis, I haven't heard a reason other than somebody saying, well, it could be this or it could be that.
We don't know. We have to.
We don't, but do the analysis. On what basis would one say? Why would you say that here we believe that it would be substantially less? That's the question.
We take a look, we'll have an idea. I'm not saying prepare a yield plan. I'm saying you have to consider what a yield plan might result in, and then you can determine whether there's a substantial reason to believe that it would be way less than the density calculation.
Well, we don't believe that there would be, and I guess the issue...
Based on what, though, Rick? Based on what? The density calculation? That just tells you what you wind up with under the density calculation.
Based on applying the code to the property.
Applying the code to the, well, maybe we see an analysis applying the code to the property, and that'll give the board a basis for saying that yield plan would not result in substantially less. But we've got to have something.
I'm not... I'm sorry? The burden is not on us, that's correct. It's in the reasoning of the planning board, that I'm just literally applying the code. And what I'm saying is that, forgive me, but Glenn's been doing this for a long time. If he's telling us to comply with your code to do a yield plan, it could cost us $163,000. And we have not heard from the board a reasonable basis.
If you want the board to instruct their consultants to go out and examine the issue without your input, the board could certainly do that, and then they'll see if they can provide you with it. But I think it would be more constructive if you work together with our consultants.
But who's going to pay for it? Us.
Afraid so.
So where's the reason? I'm just quoting from your code.
Yeah, our code says that we need to make, the board needs to make a determination whether a yield plan would be substantially less lots than the density plan. We have not examined that issue. All we have is the density calculation.
Yeah, so I think there is... I think there is reasonable, I mean, we have good reasons to think that it's not going to be, and that's why about 3 years ago I engaged the services of Glenn, and about a year ago I engaged the services of Rick. We do believe that based on what the code says, we have the right to have 24 lots. Like and if the board doesn't agree with us, then I'm going to have to pay your consultants and my consultants to maybe get to that determination that we had reasonable, that you didn't have reasonable basis for that. I would accept that that's a process, but I just don't think that is fair. And I think if at the end of the process you guys say, well, you were right, we got to this point, and then I'm going to say, oh, thank you very much. I am $168,000 poorer.
No, 168 would be if you did a yield plan. I'm suggesting something less than that to examine whether a yield plan should be prepared.
Can I just, let's just quote from Hudson Highlands Land Trust memo, because does everyone have this? So page 2 of 6, middle of the page. This is their logic in their professional opinion as to the quote, reasonable basis. It says, quote, since a great amount of the open space proposed in this conservation subdivision would also be undevelopable in a conventional subdivision due to steep slopes, wetlands, cost-prohibitive road construction, etc., it seems quite possible, and in our view, meaning the Hudson Highlands Land Trust's view, it is likely that a yield plan calculation would result in a lower number of units than the density formula. Now, that is their opinion. That is their opinion as to a reasonable basis. It has been articulated on this piece of paper by a group of people that are funded by this community and many other places, and we have historically entertained HHLT in all kinds of ways with great gravitas to the point where they are cited in this book often as being a reference for various things. I'm not sure I believe that's a sufficient reasonable basis. I'm not sure. We have never talked about it as a board, really, in an open forum. It may be worth engaging that conversation, and it may be worth asking AKRF to prepare a viewpoint as to whether that's a substantially reasonable basis for us. But I just want to put a point in that it has been stated by this group in this document. And Mr. Rourke, I believe you stated that they did not. It was. It's right here.
Yes, I'm not disagreeing.
No, you did. You actually stated that they did not, there was no reasonable basis provided. And I would actually suggest that that is a rational basis.
That's their opinion.
Yep, that's right.
That's their opinion, but the rationale behind that opinion is because there's certain properties that would not otherwise be developable. Well, guess what? Whether it's a yield plan or it's a density plan, it's the same outcome. There are always, when you have a conservation subdivision or a cluster subdivision, there's always property that you want to preserve because it is sensitive. So I guess my point is, respectfully, I disagree with you. That is their...
No, it's not my opinion.
I understand.
That's their rationale.
But that's their opinion, not a rationale.
All right, let's, we're not going to solve this tonight. I think we need to sit down, possibly another work session, and get our heads together and talk to our advisors and your advisors and come up with some sort of middle point.
We've done this before with the HHLT. I was just going to suggest that to avoid maybe triangulation of information and having, spending more time than necessary, we could, which we have done before, go to meet up with the HHLT people and discuss why they think that, again, their interpretation of the law makes them believe that that it would be better for everyone to have the yield plan. And we disagree, but if we sit down and we tell them and hopefully show them why we think otherwise, we don't have to come with two different things. And in your process of part 3, you won't have to field multiple opinions and just come up with one consensus.
I'd like to see something like that done, so we don't, come here in open forum like this and try and iron out the differences of opinions. Okay. Is there anyone else has anything else to say? Neil?
Just to be clear, the part that the environmental review is unrelated to the yield plan and density formula discussion. So the part 3 is not related to the unit count.
That's right.
Well, it is in a broad sense of, how many units you have is going to affect what your potential impacts are. It might be that they wind up with less if that's the way you have to go. But for the time being, you should assume that the unit count is what it is and proceed with your seeker accordingly.
I just want to follow up and just remind, the language in the zoning code does say that the intent of the density formula was to approximate the yield plan. The problem we have right now is we have no idea what the yield plan is giving, and so that's why we keep being very concerned about setting precedent here and the planning board not having had this discussion about whether or not there is a reasonable basis for the planning board to conclude. I mean, obviously we have our input, but for the planning board to come to the conclusion whether or not the yield plan gives a significantly different result than the density formula. Because if that discussion is never had, you do run the risk or we run the risk as a town that on an ongoing basis, a conservation subdivision is seen as a way to get a lot more units than you would ever have in a conventional. That's the heart of our concern.
Okay, anything else, anybody? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Second? All in favor? Aye, thank you.